Good evening, Panthil bhai. Thank you for accepting my request for this interaction.
Good evening. Good evening.
Uh,
Thank you so much for having me.
Alright, sir. Uh, it would be, motivation for the advocates, upcoming advocates, to have you to understand you actually, and I'm very sure that it will
Thank
be.
you.
Panthil
Thank you
bhai,
so much.
can you just introduce yourself first?
Yes, I am Panthil Majmudar. I practice at the Gujarat High Court, mainly on criminal side. I am practicing along with my brother SP Majmudar. He is practicing more on civil and corporate side. And we have been practicing law since we have seen lawyers in our family since the day I was born virtually. My grandfather was a successful lawyer at Baroda, and my uncles are also lawyers. And one of my uncle was also a Supreme Court judge, Justice S.B. Majmudar. One of my uncle, Justice N.G. Nandi, was a judge of Gujarat High Court as well as Delhi High Court. And my father was also a judge of Gujarat, Bombay, and Rajasthan High Courts. And that is how we have a legal background in our family, and that is why I started law and I joined the bar.
Right, sir. Panthil bhai, can you just tell us how were you during your childhood days?
During my childhood days, actually, I was initially not that good a student during my initial years. But later on, I had picked up, and in fact, in my standard 10th, I had scored 100 out of 100 in my mathematics paper. But still, I decided to join the commerce stream because from quite a young age, I had already made up my mind that I want to do law, considering that I was in fact attending my father's office sometimes along with my mother whenever she used to go to office. And I had seen that culture in our family where my uncles, my aunt, my father, my cousins, all of them are lawyers. And so from the very beginning, I was focusing to become a lawyer. And that is how, as during my childhood days, as far as schooling is concerned, I was a good student, and I also used to uh, give a lot of time to studies, etc. And that is how my childhood days passed.
Right, sir. Sir, what do you carry along till now from what you have learned during your school time?
During the school time, well, I would say that one of the important things which I learned is discipline, and that is something which I have been carrying along all the way, and which is helping me probably even today in my profession. I have realized that discipline is very important in order to succeed in any field, whether you are a lawyer or in whatever field you are. But more particularly for a professional, it is very important to have discipline. You must be punctual, you must do your work on time, and you must devote sufficient time for reading and doing research. All these things probably you learn while you are studying, and if you are disciplined, I am sure it will be of a great help as you go forward in your life.
Right, sir. So you said that you have secured 100 out of 100 marks in mathematics. Now, in order to secure that, you must have worked very hard, in a very disciplined manner. So, can you just tell us what actually you have followed to study that way? What was your pattern of your study, so that student can understand how to actually go ahead if they are interested?
Yes, the pattern of study, I would say, is that first of all, whenever you are attending a school or a college, you must pay attention to your teacher. You must concentrate on what is being taught to you. If you are a good student, if you with concentration and dedication listen to your teachers and properly pay attention in a classroom, probably you will be able to do well in your studies, which eventually will help you in your future life. So I would say that speaking for myself, I used to concentrate in my classroom. I used to listen to my teachers, and I used to be very punctual. I used to prepare my notes. I used to do my homework on time, and that is how I think probably that discipline came into me, and slowly but surely I could do well in my studies.
Right, sir. So, have you ever thought of any other profession other than law? Ever that thought came in your mind? And what was that?
Well, frankly, I will tell you, I had never thought of any other profession except law, because from first standard, that is probably from an age when I became a little aware about the things, I have only seen black coat and gown all around me, and that is how I had made up my mind from, I would say, maybe first standard, that I want to become a lawyer. That was my aim. Though of course I had joined CA, but I ultimately did not do it. Uh, I would also advise people that along with law, if you have an additional qualification, it is very helpful. But for me, in my case, since I had always wanted to become a lawyer, and my aim was to become a lawyer, I just concentrated on that, and ultimately I became a lawyer.
So, which college you have pursued your legal studies?
I was a student at Sir Elisha Law College. It's a very old and a very good college in Ahmedabad city. It is having a very good history. Probably most of the lawyers, even in our bar at present, and even many of the honorable judges have pursued their studies from Sir Elisha Law College. Uh, it is a very good college. It was a 3-year course at that time, after I had finished my Bachelor of Commerce from HL College of Commerce. I had taken admission in Sir Elisha Law College, and I used to attend college, which is not very normal for a law student, but I used to attend college and lectures regularly, and that is how I pursued my legal studies.
Right, sir. So, what actually do you carry from what you have learned from your law college in your profession now?
Yes, in my law college, I would say that apart from bookish knowledge, it
Yes.
was good that they also used to give us certain practical knowledge. They used to organize moot court competitions. I used to take part in moot court competitions. In fact, I remember that in each year of my LLB, I had participated in the moot court competitions, and they were very well conducted. They used to do their research and give us good problems or other cases on which we had to argue for and against that case. And they also had a journal which we had to fill up after observing in the third year. If I recollect correctly, that we had to fill up a journal after attending the courts along with some other senior lawyer, and we had to jot down all our experiences, and we also used to draft bail applications, etc., certain pleadings which the teachers used to check. And the teachers were also very good. Some of them were also in the profession, who used to come for guest lectures, and that is how during my college days I had a very good experience, and I learned a lot while I was in my college.
So, how present education is law is different than what you have studied then?
Yes, I would say that in present days, though of course in present days the education has improved a lot, and in fact there are 5-year integrated law courses also. The admission to law is also very difficult these days, which is a good thing. They have a competitive examination pursuant to which you get admission in the law colleges, and they are also doing very well. But I believe that one important thing which in any law college they must concentrate on is that only bookish knowledge probably will not be helpful for a law student if the law student wants to join the profession and wants to join litigation. In case of non-litigation, yes, that can help. But in case of litigation, it is very important that you give exposure to a student to the practical world, and make sure that apart from bookish knowledge, he has the other knowledge also, which can help him to argue the cases in a court of law. Because arguing a case in a court of law is something which is very different, which probably no book can teach you. No book can teach you how to argue a case. So to develop those skills and advocacy skills, it is important that from your college days, you are being taught certain practical knowledge, you are given exposure, and you do your internship with some good lawyers who are practicing at the bar, which will be very helpful, which these days they are doing. And in fact, I say that in today's times, the education is very good. I would say that it is quite good in today's time.
So you still suggest any changes in the education system, legal education system still? I mean,
the only change which I would suggest is that don't try to make the students bookworm. And sometimes I believe that in today's time, the 5-year courses, etc., though they do have internship and everything and practical exposure and everything, but the students which are coming out from those colleges, sometimes I feel that they try to be too much of giving importance too much to the bookish knowledge, which is something which they should try to change. It is something which is the only change which I would suggest.
so this
That
is,
don't try
yes,
to make the students rely only on the books. Rather, try to impart education in such a way that they are able to develop a skill which will help them when they join the profession.
right. So as seen in these days, the bright student usually from the colleges are being absorbed by other legal law firms or the corporate institutions. And what we get in the profession is the remaining precipitates of the students that which will actually come down to litigation. The actual reason behind that is that at initial point of time they are getting a good handsome pay from the legal firms or the corporate bodies, but ultimately the bright student actually gets sticked at such institutions instead of coming down to litigation. So what is your suggestions for such bright students who actually opt for the job instead of coming down to litigation?
My suggestion would be that, see, in initial days, if you join the profession, you have to forget money.
True.
It's a fact that in initial days you have to do hard labor, and probably you will not get enough in return
Right.
if you join the profession. But ultimately there is nothing like the profession. If you are independent after a few years, if you have worked hard, if you have really slogged hard in your initial days, those things will count a lot. And the manner in which you can prosper once you join the profession after a few years, I think there is no comparison and no more job satisfaction than that. So while it is a personal choice, but I would believe that instead of going for corporate jobs, etc., it is always advisable that you rather develop a habit of working hard, forget about the returns in your initial days, and try to work in such a way that you are able to help the profession also. And all this automatically will lead to your success, and you will ultimately prosper in the profession if you are not much concerned, or rather not thinking much about earning money in the initial days.
Right, sir. Sir, when have you actually started going to court?
Just a second, I'm not able to hear your voice. Hello?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
1 second, I'm not able to hear your voice.
Am I audible now? Hello?
1 second.
I'm sorry, Panthil bhai. I think there was this problem with the connection. Please, can you repeat what
Yes.
you were telling about the law students, your ideas for the law students who are upcoming in the profession?
Yes, I would suggest that if they join the profession, there is nothing like it. in the profession, in the initial days, it will be difficult, of course, to earn money. But if you really work hard, if you work sincerely, you will definitely reap the fruits and you will definitely get the benefits in future. And there is no job satisfaction than being a successful professional lawyer. It will be really helpful to you, and therefore one should in the initial days not run after money, rather should work hard and try to become an independent lawyer, which will be a help to the profession. It will be an asset. Such students, if they join the bar, they will be an asset to the profession, and for themselves also they will be able to prosper a lot. And therefore I would suggest that they should try and join the bar, join a good senior's office, which will be very helpful for them. And this is something which I would like to suggest to them.
Thank you, sir. So tell me, when have you actually started going to courts?
I started going to courts in my third year of LLB. I had joined the office of a very respected senior, Mr. Unmesh D. Shukla. He used to practice on original side also in the city civil courts as well as at the High Court of Gujarat. And I used to attend court with him. I used to attend his cases. I used to make my notes in whatever cases I attended. I used to read his files. And I think that helped me a lot when I became a lawyer. I had an idea about the atmosphere of the courts, and that court fear probably was not there the day when I started arguing, since I was already attending the courts since for about 1 year or so before I got my sanat.
Right, sir. So whose office have you joined after actually you became a lawyer? Was it the same?
I had continued with Unmesh Bhai's office for a certain period. And thereafter, about I think 1 year or so, I had joined my brother's office, Mr. Panthil Majmudar. He was by that time an independent lawyer, and I learned a lot from him also. He also has done CA and is a very hardworking and a dedicated lawyer. And that is how I started working with him. Eventually, I am now independently working with him. Both of us are having our own firm. But I learned a lot from my brother also, who always used to encourage me. And he also always taught me that one has to be dedicated in work. And his style of working, which I observed, has also helped me a lot, because he used to sincerely read the matters. Before arguing any case, he always used to be ready. And that is something which I picked up from him. And he has taught me to draft matters and argue matters without fear. And that is something which I have learned from him also.
Right, sir. So can you tell us what is the most striking quality of Umesh Bhai that you adopt?
I would say that that is of being a fearless lawyer and not getting bogged down by your opponents, whoever he or she may be. Irrespective of your opponent, if you have a good case, you have to argue it to the best of your ability, is something which I have learned from him. And how to answer the queries of a judge at the spur of the moment when some query comes is something which I learned from him. His advocacy skills also I have learned as to how you have to address the court. His decorum, the manner in which the court's decorum is to be maintained. And even if you do get a little upset because of some query or maybe arguments of the other side, you must never lose your cool, and you must ensure that the court's decorum is maintained and your point is put through to the court. That is something which I have learned from him.
Right, sir. Sir, tell me, how was your first experience when you stood before the court? First time.
I still very, very vividly remember. It was in the vacation in 2006 May vacation. I had appeared in one condition relaxation matter for a client, he wanted to travel abroad, and there was a condition in his bail order that he cannot go abroad without permission of the High Court. And that is the matter which I had argued. I think it was before my Lord Justice H.B. Antani. That was my first case which I argued. At first, when I went to argue, I had never realized that it is so tough to go and stand over there. Since the moment you start your arguments and you are standing in front of a judge, the feeling is totally different. It is not the same like a moot court or whatever you do in your colleges. And but the honorable judge was also very kind, like most of the honorable judges which we have, who encourage the juniors. And that is how I started arguing. And probably it was a good experience, which has then followed by a number of arguments in various other cases.
Right, sir. So, do you like to tell us something on any specific matter that has actually transformed your approach towards the law and legal profession?
Yes, I think. See, initially I had started arguing civil matters as well as criminal matters. Even today also I argue civil cases also along with criminal cases. But over a period of time, there does come an occasion in your career where maybe certain cases are such that you start specializing, or rather you start to get work of a particular field more. That is what happened probably in my career also. I started arguing civil cases. I used to appear in trademark matters also. And slowly I got a lot of criminal side work. I used to argue many bails, which I still do, and quashing petitions, criminal appeals, etc. I would believe that one quashing petition which I had argued before the High Court, where certain senior counsels were appearing against me. It was a land dispute where FIR of forgery, etc. was filed. I eventually succeeded. The FIR was quashed by the High Court, and I believe that that is one case which was a turning point in my career. And these days I do get a lot of criminal work, and that is how probably I believe that if you argue to the best of your ability, there are such cases which may come along your way, and eventually I consider that that is how your career will develop.
Right, sir. So, do you idealize someone, or is there any mentor or idol in your life, in your legal profession?
Well, I would say that yes, my father, who is my mentor, he was a lawyer for more than 25 years. He also was a judge. He retired. And I have seen him, I've grown up seeing him. And right now he is a retired judge. He practices in the Supreme Court also. And I have seen him work very hard in his initial days also. And that is why I probably would consider him to be my mentor.
Right, sir. Sir, I had been to your office many a times, and I've seen that you again in front of you there are clients sitting of and all the persons sitting in front of you are different clients, not dealing with the same matter, and you actually justify each of them simultaneously. I've seen that way you're working. So how do you manage that at a time in a single time? That's how I'm
Yes,
wondering visually. So that's how I was willing to ask you sometime, but this would be a great opportunity to know that.
Well, I believe that it is very important to be patient for a lawyer. You must have patience. That is the first and the foremost requirement. Secondly, you must also know that every client who comes to you, he is facing some difficulty. Otherwise, he will not be in your office. So it is important that you give him your time. You must read his papers. You must not give him advice without reading his papers and gathering his facts. I believe that it is very important for a lawyer to give the correct advice to his client. And for that purpose, the law, of course, will take its own course, but you must gather the facts properly from the clients. For us, the only way of gathering the facts is by talking with the clients. Though of course we can read the papers and we can always know the facts from the papers, but what the client tells you, sometimes the papers may not be able to tell. So that is how I believe that I try to be patient. I try to be patient, and I do not look at the watch when I am in the office, and I try to give maximum possible time to each of my clients so that I can gather proper facts, and thereafter I can put my case before the court of law.
No, sir, question was something different. I have seen that you have been dealing with different clients simultaneously, and to understand
Yes,
things altogether in one time is a difficult task, and you do it very well. So that's what I want to understand.
simultaneously, well, for that purpose, I believe that it is God's gift. I don't know how I am able to do that. But if I am sitting in my office and there are 4 or 5 clients sitting in front of me, yes, you are right to an extent that I am able to speak with them simultaneously and uh,
Yeah.
able to understand their facts. However, I would say that since there are 2 or 3 clients, you need to do some time management, and that is the one of the main reasons why I try to speak with them at the same time, so that there is some time management. Otherwise, if I speak with them one after another, it becomes quite difficult. I since probably during my school days or during the days when I was a student, I was able to read different subjects on the same day. Probably that may be the reason why I'm able to deal with more than one client at the same time.
Right. So, what do you look upon from the advocates or a client who approaches you? What do you collect from them? Facts or a law or a point to be argued? What do you actually look for?
Yes, I would first look for the facts, as I said earlier also, that gathering facts is very important, because the clients would know their own facts. We will not know their facts. Sometimes the papers will not reflect all the facts. And that is why it is important that you gather the facts first. The law, of course, I can research on my own. The client will not know the law. So I basically look to gather the facts first, and then after doing research, apply the law to such facts.
Yes. And so, what is the process that you undertake to prepare a matter?
Yes, for preparing, I first of all, we of course have to take facts from the clients, draft the matter. At the time of drafting, it is very important that you take utmost care so that you draft the matter in such a way that if a judge reads the matter, he is able to gather your case and is able to understand your facts. Because if your drafting is not proper, probably it will create some difficulties. However, if you are perfect in your drafting, then consider that half the battle is won. Once we properly draft a case for purpose of preparation, I usually take the files to my house for reading on the previous day when the matter is to be listed, and I do read the files from the first page to the last page, and that is something which I think is the minimum which a lawyer should do in order to do justice to his client. And thereafter I do the research. I try to find out the case laws which would apply in the facts of my case, for which purpose I do take aid of various journals. In these days there are very good softwares available from which we can also find the case laws. And that is how, after preparing the case, after reading the file, after finding the judgments, we keep the relevant judgments in the file and thereafter go and argue the matter. And I do prepare my notes also. In most of the cases, they are handwritten, but I try to prepare a note in a chronological manner so that it is easy while we argue the case.
So, did you had ever an instance where you thought that there was no merit in the brief? And how do you respond to the person briefing you when you actually thought that there is matter is non-meritorious?
Yes, I honestly tell the briefing advocate or the client that if the case has no merit, it is actually not advisable to file the matter, because if there is some judgment which is against you, you know that the result may not be favorable. If it is a totally meritless case, I correctly advise my client that it's better not to go ahead with the filing of the case. However, there are certain cases where you never know the result. There are judgments on both sides. There are a number of such facts also. So there also I advise the client that you can take a chance if you want, and therefore I do make them understand what the law is. That is something which I do try to make them understand.
So what do you prefer to research law, whether it's online or a textbook or some references? What do you prefer more?
I do read Supreme Court cases, the journal texts, and online also. More research is online these days because the softwares are so good. You are able to find the judgments rather quickly. So more research is online.
Right. So what are your other hobbies than the professional work?
I love cricket, so I love playing cricket, and that is one of my main hobbies. Apart from watching movies, also I like to watch Hindi movies also.
Do you still pursue your hobbies? I mean, do you still play cricket?
Yes, I do sometimes. Though of course now my form is like Dhoni, but I do love to play cricket. And whenever I find time, I play cricket with my son and also with my brother. We love playing cricket together.
So how do you start your day? What is your daily routine?
Well, during working days, in the morning, I generally wake up early to read my files. And thereafter, we go to the office in the morning. We manage our pause list, the board. We generally allocate the matters to our junior colleagues, the different courts which they have to attend. So around 1 hour is spent in the office in the morning. And thereafter, during court hours, we hardly find any time. We are always busy arguing the matters. In the evening, after coming to my house for half an hour, I usually go to my office. And in the evening, the clients' meetings, etc. is there, drafting is there. So we finish all that work. And by the time we come home, it's generally around 8:30 p.m. So you thereafter hardly find any time to be with the family, but whatever little time we get, we do try to spend with the family.
What is your diet habits then? Because spending early morning in the profession till about 8:30, working for more than 13-14 hours in the profession. What is your daily diet routine?
Well, in the morning, I have light breakfast, maybe cereals and toast. And in the afternoon, it is difficult to have a heavy lunch. So we have a very light lunch. And the dinner is at home. It does get late sometimes. If it is very late, we have a light dinner. Otherwise, I do enjoy my meals.
Right, sir. So how are you spending your time or utilizing your time during this lockdown period?
Well, I believe that during this lockdown period, it's a time when you should think positively. You should utilize this time with your family. You get a lot of time to spend with your family, which you usually don't get during the working days. So I try to spend a lot of time with my kids. I play cricket with my kids. I watch movies. I do read books also, and I try to even refresh my legal knowledge by reading some good books and journals, and that is how I try to spend my day.
Do you suggest any reading material for the viewers?
Yes, I would say one book, Roses in December. That's a good book for all persons associated with the legal field.
MC Chagla.
Yes. It's a very good book. Which this is the right time. Probably you get a lot of time to read. So if you have not read that book, I recommend that you should read that book.
Right, sir. Sir, what changes do you expect to see in the legal fraternity post lockdown after what we all get the chance of self-realization?
Yes, I do feel that after the lockdown, the profession may not be the same for few months because there are litigants who will who would also be having financial constraints after the lockdown. The businesses have also incurred a lot of losses. But at the same time, since this is the time when, as lawyers, we have got good time to do self introspection and rather even develop ourselves better as the time goes on. I believe that in future, though initially there may be some difficulty, but ultimately I don't think there will be much of a change after 3 or 4 months maybe. I think the things will be back to normal and everything will be back to what it was. And therefore, instead of looking at it negatively, I think we should all have a positive approach. That is what I would recommend.
Right. So what advices you would like to give me in person or we the advocates of Supreme Court in general?
Well, I believe that you don't require any advice from me, but since you are asking this question, I would say that at the Supreme Court level, since it is very difficult for litigants to approach there, one of the request was that, as you have been always doing, is to try and be a little considerate and kind towards the litigants while you charge them, because it is very tough for a litigant to reach the Supreme Court. Right. Secondly, I would say that whenever the High Court file comes to you, probably you may talk over the phone before arguing the case with your briefing advocate, as he will be in a position to throw light as to exactly what had happened in the High Court and how the matter proceeded and what led to passing of the impugned order. So instead of only going through the papers and preparing the file and arguing, if before arguing you can consult and talk with your briefing advocate, probably that will help you in putting up the case better. Since you get a very limited time in the Supreme Court to argue a case, there being so many cases from all over India, it is very important that you are able to put your point within 5 minutes to the Honorable Court. And so it is very necessary to be precise on the facts. That is why I would suggest that you should talk with your briefing advocate before arguing the case.
Very well, sir. Right, sir. Thank you, Panthil bhai. It's been excellent talking with you, and I hope you won't mind uploading your conversations with on the social media.
Not at all. It will be my pleasure and my honor, and it was really a pleasure speaking with you. I really had a nice time.
Thank you, sir. One second. Thank you.